Now, earlier we were talking about some big sign, okay? And Travis, you talked about you really like big rubs.
Yeah.
Jeff, what's your thoughts on big rubs?
I love them. I'm gonna throw generally a cell camera up on a big rub. And if I can find one in a pinch point or a travel corridor, that's the areas I like to focus on. You're gonna have on these big post rubs, you're gonna have so many bucks coming through there that sooner or later you're gonna find something you like.
Well, and see, I've never run cameras on like a big, like signpost rub, as some people would call it, where you can tell it's been, historical rub. Deer have hit it for years, okay, worn down. And I know one of the cameras we walked by, you had us on camera, it's one of those spots that had a couple of those signpost rubs there. And it's like you seem to have tons of deer bucks coming through there, and not necessarily, they're not rubbing the tree, they're just kind of coming through, checking that little spot and keep moving. And it kind of changed my perspective how to maybe try to implement that as well. When you find, that one real big rub, just put a camera on and see how deer are using it. Because another podcast guest of ours, which by the time this episode comes out, his episode's already been out for a little bit. But Daniel Williams, he did that with one of his buddies where they went and found a big signpost rub in the middle of actually some pretty open woods on a piece of Pumpkin, Alabama, and just threw a camera on just to see what happened. And they would have bucks come through there, and it was always during daylight. Never had a nighttime photo of a buck, and the bucks would just like linger around that rub in this little drainage coming off a big ridge system. It's like they would just like stage up right there, last hour of daylight before they drop down to the bottom to go feed in the evening. And it's like, if you walk through there, it's like you weren't finding tracks, you weren't finding trails coming through there. It was just that one specific rub coming off that main ridge, and these handful of bucks would just center around it. They'd spend time around it. They'd fight around it before they drop down the bottom. So,
and a lot of times on those big rubs like that, most of my photos are nighttime, but it gives me an idea of what's in the area. Seems to be about the best way I've found to get a good inventory of what's around, and then figure out if you want to spend more time in there.
Better than scrapes?
I have better success on rubs than I do scrapes.
Way better.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Okay. Well, we're about 40 minutes. Like Andrew, you said this yesterday. About 40 minutes to the podcast is typically when someone says something that kind of, gets us down a rabbit hole. So y'all have more success, both of y'all, getting inventory of bucks on big rubs than scrapes.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I mean, I don't pay a lot of attention to scrapes anymore, to be honest with you.
I like to see big scrapes, but it's rare.
Yeah, it makes you know they're.
It's rare that I spend a whole lot of time hunting on them.
Yeah, me either.
Okay.
If I'm hunting over a scrape, there's another reason besides the scrape that I'm there usually.
Andrew, you just like burst your bubble a little bit, Mr. Scrape Guy?
Yeah, no, I mean, it kind of makes me wonder about some rubs that maybe I've overlooked in the past, because I've found them, and I haven't like ran cameras on them. The only time I've ever like ran a camera on a big signpost rub is there was a community scrape right there, and I put a camera on that scrape, and all the bucks were rubbing that rub that was like 15 yards behind it, and I could barely see what they were. But every once in a while, a buck would work the scrape, but I had more bucks on that rub back there. And I'm kind of slow, so I didn't like pick up on it as much.
They told you where they were at.
That's right.
Listen.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. We're gonna have to go deeper on that.
When I find big rub as big as your leg, trees tore up, little trees twisted off at the ground, that's what gets me excited.
Now, does it have to be do you when you look at that tree, does it have to have multiple years of rubs on it?
No.
Or it can just be, because you'll find, especially in North Alabama, you'll find beech trees that are like big old beech trees,
Bigger
10 inches around.
thighs.
Yeah, bigger, and Jacob's got big old thighs. And it'll be rubbed up, and it'll just be like tine marks up and down it, you know, where like you can tell he's just rubbing this giant tree.
I have more success picture-wise and hunting on fresh rubs, trees that hadn't been hit before. Can't explain that, but it seems to, I seem to have better success new rubs.
Now, big rubs, I want y'all to identify what a big rub is for each of you. So, like Travis, how big in diameter would you say, like a rub that would catch your attention more so than another one?
4 to 8 inch trees.
Okay. So about, a little bit bigger, forearm size, or a little bit bigger than your forearm.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Jeff?
I'm looking probably 6-inch plus. A lot of sweet gum trees, some cedar. But I like the ones that they've been hitting for several years. I differ from him on that. just seem to have better success on historic rubs.
This is, I guess, historical deer patterns and movements to those areas. Which, I mean, I can see success from both of them. It's like one, historically deer are coming through at some point of the season and they're rubbing. And then, Travis, you're trying to find where they're at right now. They're laying down that big sign and then hopefully maybe get a pattern on them quick and then be able to go kill them quick, right?
Right.
Okay.
I think part of that with me is I can find a historical rub deer in the summertime, and I can go ahead and hang a camera on it.
Yep.
I know it may not do me any good till middle of December, January, but the camera's already there. Mm-hmm. And versus having to go search for fresh sign in January.
That's a really good point. And it kind of goes back to, when the rut comes in some of these places, because like Travis, on some of your properties, like when are you finding some of those big rubs being made, like month-wise?
Probably mid-December, early to mid-December, when I start really seeing it.
Is there a window of time when they start popping up that, like, if you're going to have success, it's probably going to be within a certain window of time of you putting a camera out or trying to pattern a deer there? Or would that pattern still work into the rut?
Yeah, I would say it still worked right on into the rut.
Okay. Interesting.
Man. All right, this got my wheels turning a little bit. I like that's a really good point, actually, about being able to find that during the summer and go ahead and hang a camera on it. I didn't think about that, man. That's pretty slick.
We know a couple spots that's got something like that.
Yeah, no, I've already got like 2 or 3 off the top of my head where I'm like,
let me ask.
You can't sneak in there to hang a camera without me knowing it.
yeah, I'm just going to put my camera right below your camera.
Yeah. Is there a situation, have y'all ever hunted in an area, maybe it's got pretty good deer density, but it's like, it seems like there's a lack of sign for whatever reason, like rub wise. Like we hunt a couple spots that have fairly high deer numbers, maybe not as high as some of the spots that you guys have hunted, especially like Travis on some of your areas, but it's like you go in there and you'll find more scrapes than rubs. It's like scrapes are way more common for some reason than rubs are, especially big rubs. Have y'all ever dealt with something like that?
I see that a lot, but I can't explain it either.
2 years ago, the area I hunt, you just about couldn't take a step without stepping in a little 1 foot diameter scrape where you just pawed the ground 2 or 3 times. It was crazy. There was thousands of them. And I don't understand why, but they never came back and hit them. Now, we did still have, your big scrapes. Mm-hmm. But I still hadn't figured out what that was all about. It was wild.
So the same thing. It's like those big rubs just aren't necessarily super common. Like you may find a little concentration, but it's not like you're just going to walk out there and, you're finding a lot of big rubs compared to like, you're going to probably find a lot more scrapes than you are going to be finding, solid size rubs that you might want to put a camera on.
When I'm walking through a swamp or river bottom and I see a tree glowing from 100 yards away, there ain't much that gets me more excited.
Yeah, I agree.
It goes back. Now actually, I did lie. I have put camera on a big rub like that, but in Arkansas, had some big cedars or good sized cedars down in a big river bottom, and put cameras on them. Found them the year before, put cameras on them. We had bucks come through there, kind of like what y'all were talking about. And it was just on a major trail. I didn't realize when we first went in there, the trail was kind of faint, just because like all the vegetation growing up underneath it. But as the later into the season, into the winter, the trail got really defined, and the bucks would just like walk right through there. Some of them would smell the rub, but they would pretty much just walk right through in that one spot where that real big rub was located at. So that's kind of, that's interesting. Again, just looking at these big rubs as a place to be able to get inventory and also be able to try to pattern a deer of when they're coming through there, and are they coming from the same direction every time, or are they going back and forth at that specific location?
I think the other thing that I like rubs better than scrapes is if I'm hunting an area I've never been to, I don't have any cameras, you can only learn so much about the size of a deer from a scrape. But when you've got a rub that's got tine marks up to your chest or your shoulders, that ain't a little spike doing that.
That's right.
Very true. That was one thing, and I think I messaged you about that when we were hunting one area this past season. Is like I found rubs in a certain spot after you got me on camera that they were up to almost the base of my neck, tine marks on that tree when I walked up to it, and I'm like, dude, that deer. Because a lot of people talk about like you can't tell the size of a buck.
But it was a sweet young tree, wasn't it?
It might have been. I can't remember. I think I got a photo of it somewhere. But like, you can't tell, just by the diameter of a tree that deer's rubbing. You can't tell how big the deer is. But if you look at the tine marks, again, unless you get like a 17-inch spike or something like that, like you're not going to find tine marks. Like I'm not a super tall guy, but 5'9". If I can find tine marks up to like upper part of my chest, that's going to be a deer with some really good time length and probably some really good main beams as well. Also, do y'all ever pay attention to finding tine marks? If like you get a cluster of like say different trees together and find tine marks on a sapling 8-10 inches behind the tree or to the right or left of the tree and find tine marks there.
Yeah, that really fires me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pay close attention to that.
And that's like that's something that keys you in a little bit more. Like that deer's got some width, he's got some tine length, he's got a little bit of everything in order to be able to rub that trees off to the side.
Or you got
behind
that
it.
tree that splits like this and he's tore up both sides. That's there's nothing better than that.
Okay. Now, also with rubs, is there anything else that you can tell from a rub or like kind of keys you in on? Of course, point of travel or anything like that, or based off where it's located, like whether it's in some real open cover versus, again, on the edge of one of these transition edges between thick and more open cover that kind of keys you in on, like, I'm not going to put up necessarily a camera on every one of these big grubs, but some of those rubs maybe closer to thick cover is the ones you're going to focus on.
Yeah, a lot of times with me, when it's a big deer, when you find a big rub on a oak ridge or through some open pines, if you can it'll normally lead you back to the bedding. I mean, you normally can follow those rubs right back to where he's living. And that's kind of how I approach it. Rub lines.
So using that rub line as a way to backtrack that buck, and then
That's right.
maybe as you're working that back trail, going back to potentially his bedding location, you're kind of dropping some cameras, or do you try to get as close as possible and put that camera out?
Close as possible.
Okay.